to talk to you about the life cycle of organizations. I want to begin by talking to you about a house. Imagine that after months and years of hoping and planning, you buy a house. You are so excited because this is going to be your dream house, and you are going to turn it into exactly what you want your house to be. So you move in and you immediately think, you know what, I want to do some serious landscaping on this house. So you bring in some gardeners and you plant a beautiful garden. Imagine all of your favorite trees and plants and vegetables and fruits, and you make it really colorful and beautiful. You want to do some decorating, of course, so you get really beautiful window treatments, and you maybe do some interesting architectural work on the outside just to make the exterior more beautiful. So you do all of this work, and you get this house to a place where you really, really love it. But time goes on, you have other commitments, you're busy, and there isn't as much time to spend on the house. And in the way of things, as the years pass, the house begins to decay a little bit. After a few years, you notice that there's a little bit of structural damage going on down by the foundations on both sides of the house. You notice that, you know, that roof's getting a little old and maybe it needs to be either repaired or replaced, but that's a big project and you don't really have time this year, so you put it off. You'll get to it eventually. After a while, you don't have time to maintain that beautiful garden and that lawn the way you used to, so things begin to grow and the bushes begin to kind of get in the way of the house itself. The weeds start taking over your gorgeous garden, and so on. You can't even see those flowers anymore. Weather happens, all the things that usually happen to a house happen, and you just begin to notice cracks and fissures. And all sorts of things are going wrong with this house, and you just keep telling yourself, well, you know what, I can still live in it. I can live in this house, and eventually I'm going to get to some of this stuff. I just don't have time right now. Eventually, though, you get to a point where you realize, wow, this house at this point is so different from the house I moved into and dreamed about and got so excited about. What will it take to get this house back to where it was in the beginning? So you bring in an expert. And they do their assessment, they check everything. And then after looking at all the facts, they turn to you and say, you know what? You might actually be better off letting this house go. You might be better tearing it down and starting over. Because the amount of work it would take at this point to get that house back to where you want it is just going to be too much. What I'm describing here is a natural process. It's not good or bad in and of itself. It's just what happens. Things decay. Things are born. Things grow old. Things decay. Things die. The same is true of organizations. And that is why I want to talk to you about the life cycle of organizations. And when I say organizations, I'm talking about all sorts of different things. We could be talking about a church. We could be talking about a ministry within the church, a small group, or a commission, or a particular ministry area. We could be talking about a family or a marriage. And just like the house, organizations go through a life cycle. We begin with birth. This is the point at which a new ministry starts. People are so excited. They gather together. They have a vision for a new ministry in a church, and they are really excited about what's going to happen with it. So they get together and they begin to form an idea for what this ministry is going to be. Once it's born, they put a lot of energy into its formation. And this is where they ask those essential questions. What is our ministry for? What is its purpose? What are its goals? How does it fit into the church as a whole? Who are we trying to reach? How are we going to describe this ministry in a way that draws people in? And during this point, there's just a lot of creativity, energy. People are so excited about this ministry. And so through this process of formation, the ministry begins to move to a place of health. It is a healthy ministry, which means that it is a stable ministry. The ministry arrives at a point of stability. It has its place in the church. It knows what it's about. It has a core group of people who are involved and newcomers joining, and things are good. Unfortunately, organizations don't just stay this way on their own. There is a cycle. So left to itself, that ministry will not stay in a place of stability. It will begin to move. Specifically, it will move towards a place where it becomes stagnant and stale. The ministry still exists. People show up, but it's a little bit of boredom, a little bit of tiredness, a little bit of, oh man, I gotta make it out to the Wednesday evening meeting again, and so many other things I'd rather be doing. And so things begin to get a little stagnant, a little old. If no intervention happens at this point, if people just think, you know what, but we have a place in the church, we've been doing this for a long time, we're just gonna stick with it, we begin to move further down on this cycle. And we begin to get to a point of decline. This is where the organization or the ministry group begins to lose numbers. People are no longer joining. Some of the members who used to be really excited no longer come. Meetings begin to get sporadic, disorganized. There's just things starting to fall apart. Once again, if no intervention happens here, the cycle continues. And we reach a point of disintegration. At this point, people are struggling even to remember how and why the ministry began. That forming vision has faded. People don't really know why they're doing what they're doing, except that they're just showing up because they've always showed up. Numbers continue to go down. Sometimes there's even conflict and dissension within the group at this point, and it really has reached a point of unhealthiness. If nothing is done here, the cycle keeps going to its natural conclusion, which is death. The ministry dies. Again, this is not about good or bad, moral or immoral. This is what happens with organizations. It's the natural life cycle of organizations. But there are things that we as leaders and people involved in a ministry can do to change or to slow down this process. And that's what I want to talk about next. So, when we're in a place of formation and health and stability, there's a kind of work that has to happen right at that point. And that is ongoing renewal. When people are in a healthy ministry, they might think, well, we're good. We don't really need to do anything. Things are just going fine as they are. But that's actually not true, because left to itself, the cycle will keep moving. So there has to be this ongoing work of bringing people back to that point of formation. What are we about? What is exciting about our ministry? What are our founding stories that keep us motivated? How do we keep getting new people to join us? So this work is really important even when the ministry is at a place of health and stability. And you'll notice that at this point, keeping the organization healthy only takes a little bit of work, right? We're pretty close to health already. As we move further down, though, the amount of work gets so much bigger and more daunting. Now, if we don't intervene at the point of health and stability, we begin to reach a place of stagnation, then we need more than just renewal. We begin to need renewal and revitalization. We need to sort of come alive again. We need to really ask some really penetrating questions about what we're about, why we formed, how do we keep the energy and the creativity alive. So again, this is, not too much work, but more work than here. But let's say the ministry decides not to do this. We just keep doing what we've done all along, hoping that it's all going to be okay. Then we might get to a place of actual decline. And at that point, an intervention would be redevelopment. This is where you call the group back down to its core and say, wait a minute, we're in trouble now. What are we going to do? How are we going to redevelop this group and try to get us back to a place where we feel alive and focused and interested and energized? So this is even more work, but it's still doable. It's still possible to get us back to a place of excitement and health and stability. If we don't do this, though, and we keep going and start heading towards disintegration, the group reaches a point of unhealthiness where they just can't do the work by themselves anymore. And at that point, the group needs outside intervention. This is where a ministry might call in a consultant, someone who can really come in and assess the whole picture, look at the dynamics within the ministry and say, all right, this is what needs to be done. Often, if a group is already here, if a ministry is already here, that outside intervener might come in and take a good look and say, you know what, I think at this point the amount of work it's going to take to get back here is just too much. It might actually be wiser to let this ministry die. Maybe it has fulfilled its purpose, its time is done, it's time to let it go, so that something new can be born. And that is the life cycle of all organizations. And I just want to stress the fact that, you know, for us as Christians, we don't need to fear this. We don't need to be afraid of death, right? Because we are a people who believe firmly that death precedes resurrection. And so when a ministry dies, we believe that God is at work and that God can birth something new and something beautiful among us. So as you think about your organization, your ministry team, your commission, whatever ways in which you participate in the life of St. Mark's, one of the things we'd like you to do is to think about where your ministry is in this cycle. Are you new and excited? Are you deeply formed, healthy, stable? Or are you moving towards this part of the cycle? And if this is happening, what would it look like to bring you back to here? And that is a life cycle of organizations. Thank you.